Now we turn our attention to the thermotherapy or heating modalities. This is page 126 in your chapter 5. And just like the last part of the cold part, there's this fancy little figure 5-7 with a nice little chart. This is it. If you know this chart, you don't even have to listen to the rest of this, the PowerPoint lecture here, because it has everything you want that you're going to need. All these shaded areas, all these shaded boxes are a lot of the clinical applications. These are your physiologic effects, definitely up here. And then what the increased tissue temperature and increased cell metabolism are trying to accomplish are some of these other things. And so there are times when we want to reduce swelling or increase inflammation and do some, jumpstart inflammation, and definitely pain control and decrease spasm. So there's a lot of, how does heat, if I ask you, how does heat decrease muscle spasm? You're going to go step 1, step 2, boom, boom, boom. That's how it works. So anyway, that if you know that, then you're in good shape. But I'll go through this anyway. In your book, it seems like most of the chapter is taken up by cryotherapy, just like the videos here in the PowerPoint. And then it's, oh, by the way, you can also put heat on, right? A lot of it is very similar concepts, especially when we talk about the superficial stuff. We had a couple modalities that can get a little bit deeper, but look, the most of it is just the opposite of cryotherapy. So when we talk about that, if you go back to that chart, if you knew that chart, you would see a lot of these bullet points on there. If you like bullet points, and if you like Step Brothers, you can see that. But if you like bullet points, there they are, right? So you go through that hot pack. The one thing I want to draw your attention to, figure 5-8, is a good picture in your text. It talks about how we put a hot pack on, and yes, the heat is transferring from the hot pack conductive into the tissue, but this hot pack is also going to lose heat here. And so the window that we have is not good. The book also definitely talks about some, it goes into the different types of physiologic effects and how we might use some of these things. And when you think about what this does, it vasodilates and makes more permeability. It delivers oxygen, a little gate control. These two right here, this might be something where we start with some hot pack to get some analgesia, get some gate control, and then make sure that tissue is kind of stretched out, and then we can start working and moving a little bit more mobilization on that tissue itself. Page 128 has the actual specific injury response process, and so it kind of relates all these different things. So ultimately, from an acute standpoint, heat is going to stimulate the inflammatory process, and so we want to be careful if it's an acute injury. If this is more of the chronic injury, there may be times that we want to stimulate it. If this is something that we want to keep things in a elastic state, like this person's on the bench for a little while, but it's going to go back in. So those are a lot of times why we use those. From the muscle spasm, where is that? That's over here somewhere. It's on page 130. As we talk muscle spasm, it's good to know. I think these bottom three, that should be a bullet, but these bottom 3 areas is really the mechanism of why you would use it to reduce spasm and why it might help with spasm. This part right here, though, this doesn't help us, right? So the muscle spindles, that it's going to make them more likely to fire and create more tension. And so we want to go easy on that. And so that's why cryotherapy is going to basically increase that threshold for firing. So the muscle spindles are not as active, and every little length change is not going to cause them to generate more tension. So it's just different. There's a different application. We can talk about, a lot of times when people have a tight neck or sore muscle, trigger point, whatever we want to call it, and we say, put some ice on your neck. They're like, heck no. I want to put some heat. That makes me feel better. we'll talk about the heat versus cold conversation. On page 131, it starts talking about the use of heat versus cold. And in fact, on page 132, there's a little table that kind of gives you a good, it's a good visual representation of comparing those two. As we get into the last part of the chapter, I'm going to direct your attention. You do have to have an idea, a general idea, especially on the practical side, of what are indications for cold, what are contraindications for actually heat and cold, right? And then as we get into chapter 6 is the kind of gives us a step-by-step clinical application on each individual one. It kind of describes it, gives you the kind of the indications, the contraindications, the main effects, gives you how long to treat, how do you treat it, what are the precautions for each specific one. So I'm looking at specifically cold packs, page 136. So I want you to look at all of these things in chapter 6. There's good information. A lot of it is reinforcing the stuff that's in chapter 5. There's some new stuff. It's presented a little bit differently, so I do like that. And then if we go to page it's actually 162, but if you go, there's a section 2 quiz. I'm not assigning this. I'm just telling you this is a good place to kind of test yourself if you want to go through those and see if you can get those right. The questions or the answers are in the appendix F, I think. Yeah. So you can look at those as you see fit. But that's it for the heat. So a long one on cold, a little bit shorter one on the heat.